Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. Well, I've just made a video admitting my shortcomings about sometimes understanding things or remembering them. And in this case, it was about the accuracy of how SketchUp does or doesn't, or can or can't, measure things. Well, it was me. It wasn't SketchUp. SketchUp does a good job at the very thing I was criticising, and that was being able to accurately, or precisely, but accurately read or represent, show these sorts of angular measurements and linear measurements for that part. But being a builder, I'm happy with tolerances that 1mm is fine. Anyway, with that put aside, I was so annoyed with myself when Aaron over at SketchUp, when I watched his video, it was either today or yesterday, and I saw what he did and I go, oh! And I went back and I thought, oh man, you idiot, you knew that all the time. In fact, you just made the decision and you forgot the decision or the process. Anyway, I digress. What have we got here? Well, I kind of think I'm kind of thinking that I'm happy with this. It's the hub. Actually, I'll just zoom out a little bit. I'll hide a few things so that they don't distract. Some of them I need later on for the drawing purposes, but this is one of the hubs. Everything seems to fit pretty much. It's showing the size of the hub accurately. It's, in this case, it's 114mm in diameter, or better be, otherwise about 114mm in diameter, so 100 mils on the inside, there or thereabouts, and all of my bolts fit in it. In this, whoa, where was it? Okay, sorry about that, but they all fit in with the interface block in place. I haven't shown the top row of bolts because it just gets a bit occupied. But what I've done is I've created the interface where there's a bracket. Actually, I'll just get rid of some more things here. We've got a bracket that we can bolt on the end of the strut. The bolts go through the hub, through the bracket, into the timber, and then thread into a steel dowel or steel pipe. Means also that I can torque it up to the max, and that would be probably enough resistance to pulling apart and dislocation just in that one bolt. But because it's right at the bottom, there is some moment or leverage that can be had here in extreme situations. So that bracket comes up and folds over and can be screwed into the strut, meaning that it can't separate at this point here from the hub, making it a very strong, neat, aesthetically pleasing, I think, hub strut connection. Now, why have I got this? Oh, sorry about that zooming. I'm going to have to get myself a 3D mouse or something. Anyway, why am I worrying about this hole here? Well, not. Why am I showing the hole here where it is located? Well, pleased you asked. It's in the center. Oh God, it's terrible. It's in the center of the timber. I mean, it's in the neutral axis of the timber, and imposes less of a stress on the timber. And that's, I'll just show you at the moment, that is approximately 150mm from the end of the timber. So that's not too bad. 6 inches, 150mm. But there are others that are, if I just take a measurement, 180 millimeters from the end of the timber. The only reason for that is I'm wanting to, if possible, keep all of my bolts square to the face of the tube. I don't want to have the bolts angled, which means all of these lower bolts, and the top ones for that matter, are at the same height relative to the steel hub. They will be slightly different at the points of the strut by 4 mil, 3 mil, whatever it happens to be. That is true. But if those, because the struts themselves are at slightly different heights, ever so slightly geometrically, but if the bolts are square, I also wanted them to the hub. I also wanted them to be the same height on the hub so that the manufacturing process is so much easier. So I can say all the hubs have the holes drilled in at, say, 15 millimeters up from the bottom. Whatever. 20 mils down from the top, 15 up from the bottom. That being the case, the central axes, this will be at a different distance out because the strut is at a slightly different angle from ones adjacent to it. Meaning, if I want to keep the aesthetics, that has long-winded, man, I need to think of the aesthetics, and I said, right, we'll keep the threaded the tube that the threaded rod will go into, we'll keep it in the neutral axis, and that will visually look quite neat. Yes, it will be a different distance out from the end, but at least it's in the right place, air quote, structurally, in the strut. I think that to be true. Engineers, correct me at your leisure, but I think that's a reasonable thing, because if I don't, it gets dangerously close, top or bottom, to the other edges, and I don't think that's overly desirable. So at this stage, we've got quite a nice setup. It's just knowing where to put the things relative to the hub itself and the struts, and that's not a straightforward decision. The thing is, though, these would be bolted in. I'll just get rid of this for the moment. This would be, I'll get rid of a couple of other things in the background. I've just gone quiet, yes, because I'm just getting rid of some of those. All these things. They would be radially placed around the hub, drilled at the required distance up and the angle. Easy to get with a printed out copy of the angles, and you just insert it, lay it over the steel hub, and give a scribe mark onto the steel, drill it at the right heights and angles, and it's at 90 degrees. So easy to do in the workshop. But these tabs would be bolted into place like this. The head would just be recessed into the timber, but straight. They'll be straight up in the air, or perhaps creased and bent at a 45 in a bending break or some such thing. That means that they can, after the strut has been bolted in with the bottom assembly, they can have the tab finished being bent down onto the top of the strut and then screw fixed to the top, making for a tight connection at this point here, because you really don't want any slop in there, ideally. Yes, you want to keep it as tight as possible. I'm thinking later on, if we have to put the cladding on and it were to be utilising sealant as part of the waterproofing, it's nice not to put the sealant under stress, and keeping the flexion down at this point probably wise for that and that alone. Anyway, I digress. So that's actually a really simple approach. It would be a 2mm at the most. I don't think it needs to be much heavier. I think I might have shown a 2 or a 3mm. What have I got there? Oh, I've shown a 3mm piece of steel there. I think it only really needs a 2mm strap. Can't see the loading being that high in this area, but whatever. So yes, that's to me is a really, I've got one of the tabs missing there, but that's a really easy way of assembly. 90% probably, pick a figure, 90% of the structural connection is with this lower bolt, probably a 12mm bolt, possibly, yeah, maybe even well, here's the other thing. This approach scales very, very easily. So I've actually, in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to think that I'd be using heavier timbers. They could be 150 deep or 200 deep, or they could be doubled up. This approach works really well for all of those sizes. If I went to a, oh God, I wouldn't imagine what size dome it would be, but if I went to, say, a 6x4 or a 150x100, I could extend the pipe out, use a 16mm rod here, up the size. The design works for the bigger units. Hubs just need extending. Really good approach. Also, this can be used in other style of domes, not the quad domes or the grid-based domes that I'm considering. This would work well in other style of domes, and that's where some of the options that I looked at for hubs wouldn't work for me, because I've got a specific requirement. The angles are specific, the sizes, the loadings are specific. So therefore some of the hub designs and connections aren't suitable for what I'm doing, but this approach may well be suitable for, it's almost like it's backward compatible with other types of domes. So I have come up with, not necessarily my original idea, but certainly the how I've adapted it. I think I've come up with a really good, simple enough design. The only thing is you'd have to buy, and it's not expensive, $100 for a length of pipe like this, heavy walled, 5mm, might be a bit more expensive than that, and just cutting it to a specific length, in this case 90mm, having the ability to drill through the hub on your drill press, make up some jigs, not that difficult, and it's not 100% critical that they are 100% correct in their hole placement. I say that now not having built one yet, but I've gone through the design process and it's a wee bit further, and that's what I was thinking, that there's a little bit of play that could be had in the hole here. Might be necessary anyway. I digress. Simple 2mm, 3mm strips, 25mm wide or whatever, 12mm bolt, threaded rod, water pipe, easy obtained, easy-ish to obtain. Can't go to the local hardware store, but you go down to the local steel merchants and they'll have heaps of this pipe that's a commercial type of product. Only tricky bit is this, and that's what I'll be working on next. I think I can come up with, I don't know whether it needs to be steel. My brain says yes it does. My thinking says it could be something, so long as it's dense and not crushable, it's probably going to have to be steel, isn't it? Most plastics would be a wee bit of an issue. It's all to do with surface area and the compression capability. Anyway, that's outside my experience for the moment. So anyway, there we go. We have got, I think, the starts of a very nice dome type connection system. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. If you don't want to see this, a simple plate can be put over here as well, and everything gets hidden. I think that's really neat, because then the only fixings really you would see are these pipes here, which don't look that horrible. But yeah, do everything neatly and then leave it exposed. That's probably the best way. Okay, that's it. I'll now need to get some of the glitches out of this, my drawing, and then I'll get back to you and see whether you like what I've... Well, I don't really know whether you'll like it, but I'm liking it. Righty-ho, that's it. See you in the next one. Bye now.